What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. It is officially a hump day with Hopmayer. Rachel Hopmayer is back on the Pack a Day podcast, and it is a good thing that she is, because I don't know if anyone else realized this, but she took 1 week off, which was actually on both of our ends. The scheduling didn't work for either of us, but everything went to crap. Aaron Rodgers got COVID. The Packers lost. Jordan Love didn't look great. We missed one hump day with Hopmayer, and everything went haywire.
Yeah, honestly, what a crazy concept. I'm not going to say it's correlation or causation, but let's go with it. Let's stay on schedule. We're doing the best we can. And obviously, yes, I'm happy to be here. Should we start with all of that? We've talked enough about Rodgers having COVID, but the latest news is the Packers being fined for breaking COVID protocols. Team hit with 300,000. Rodgers and Lazard hit with 14.5, which is, according to league and union protocols, what players would be charged for their first offense in COVID protocols. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, first of all, my thoughts always when fines come out is it's always interesting to me how fines vary differently dependent upon what stature of player that you are. It always is crazy to me in preseason where somebody gets an illegal hit fine and it's $45,000 and it's some preseason guy that's going to get cut the week later and he's not going to make that the entire year, which I'm sure some of that stuff gets sort of flushed out, in appeals and things like that. But obviously this is a very different fine for Alan Lazard at his price point than it is for Aaron Rodgers at his price point. For Aaron Rodgers, it's barely a slap on the wrist. For Alan Lazard, it probably feels fairly legitimate. But obviously the big news here for me and Rachel, I've kind of gone over this before, but when it comes to that stuff, obviously I don't want to see players get fined and things like that. But let's just go from a fan standpoint, right? As long as it's not something that costs the Packers competitively. They haven't lost draft picks, although Adam Schefter did report the fact that if this continues to happen, they could lose draft positioning or draft picks in the future, but no draft picks. It's not like it's affecting their salary cap or anything like that. So this is a fine levied on the team for $300,000, which I think is fair given the accusations, that were out there. But as a fan of the team, I don't think you can be too upset by anything. It doesn't really affect too much that actually goes on within the realm of the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just pretty plainly, here's the consequence for your actions. And if it happens again, there will be football related consequences, just like LaFleur wants to refer to the football space. That can come into question. Mark Murphy's response to ESPN seemed pretty plain as well. We've cooperated. The league said that they took the team's cooperation with the investigation into consideration. I don't know why that should be a factor at all. Great, you got all the evidence out there. You still broke protocols. That doesn't change past action at the end of the day. So it's interesting that this has come to an end. I'm interested in how physical and visual of a change there will be. We've already seen around the league Kirk Cousins, Carson Wentz being a lot more active with their mask wearing. It was also reported that the Vikings were told by the league that unvaccinated players didn't have to wear their masks at indoor media availability. And now that the Rodgers situation has gone so public, so third rail, so notorious, that the league reached back out and said, you have to go revert back to this. So whatever the miscommunications were out there, the league has been set to make Rodgers an example, and as they should, to be quite honest. And that's the facts of what happened. And it came down to that Halloween party. That was key at the end of it, because it's not just the inside the facilities. The players very much know that they unvaccinated and unmasked should not be hanging out with more than 3 players. It doesn't matter that it wasn't a team sanctioned event. The owner of the car museum right across the river from me said that it was a privately run event, probably just funded by a couple of the guys, or maybe QB funded it himself in a very nice way, unlike Von Miller allegedly didn't want to do with his Halloween party. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And you all posted about it on Instagram. The evidence has basically exposed itself.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, these things are obviously all, this is not the fun stuff to talk about, right? Fines for the teams and things like that. And hopefully this is all passed. I think the one thing that's frustrating, as it doesn't necessarily have to do with COVID protocols or anything like that, but is consistency from the league. I think that's the one thing that you would really like to see with punishments, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's, drug use, whether it's performance enhancing, whether it's COVID protocols, whatever. The same judgments don't seem to be made consistently throughout the course of the league. And that's infuriating. And even with the stuff that's going on with the Washington football team, we saw an owner, I believe it was the Panthers, if memory serves, that was basically ousted for what seems lesser of the evils between them and Washington. But Washington is, nothing's really happening. Like it's a level of consistency. And when you're policing the league and when you're handing down punishments and rules, you would just like to see consistency. If this happens, then this is the punishment. If Green Bay made errors by not having players wear face masks in the media room, then so did Indianapolis and so did Minnesota. And that doesn't absolve Green Bay of the error or anything like that. But you would just like to see in everything some level of consistency. And then, oh, by the way, maybe make as big of a deal out of the domestic abuse and some of the stuff like that as you do deflating a football. And I don't want to jump into all of that because that's a whole can of worms. We don't want to get into it all, but you would just like to see punishments fitting the crime and consistent punishments throughout for the exact same thing, hand in hand. And that's what sometimes is so frustrating about the NFL.
I completely agree with you. And we've even seen a lot of pundits, well and ill-intentioned this week, make conversations comparing the response to Rodgers versus the response to Henry Ruggs versus the response to Colin Kaepernick. And while I think some of those conversations are ill-intentioned and should not be given the intention, there is something to be said for when the league's perspective on an issue and force force behind a conversation has to do with their PR lens on a situation. Yep. At the end of the day, Henry Ruggs has made a terrible choice and made a terrible mistake. There is still something to be said about the league helping out with alcohol problems, with partying issues. The NFLPA already pays for your Ubers, but there's still something to be said about when you have a team in Vegas, when you have party culture around these guys with a lot of money and fame, how you can help them and better support them.
Agreed.
Same with domestic abuse. Same with deflating footballs. All of these issues should have the same amount of intention, league intervention that's appropriate to every answer, whether it's a football issue or a personal issue. At the end of the day, you can tell that some of this from the league side blew up because of the PR angle of coronavirus, as well as, the media is impacted by these choices. At the end of the day, the protocol was broken in front of the media. Yep. We are all required to be vaccinated in order to sit in that room. I have to be vaccinated to keep my job, to cover this team. And players don't have to, which is more than okay. I respect that decision, but rules are rules. Everybody's got rules, and rules aren't always made to be broken. No,
they are not. But let's pivot to something a little bit more fun, or at least entertaining, because I think we've all had our share of all the other stuff. So let's talk about Odell Beckham Jr., which is also oddly a polarizing issue, it seems.
Is
because
that really fun right now?
No, what isn't polarizing at this point? So even Odell Beckham to Green Bay, I think, has its supporters and its naysayers. Well, let's just start with you. What are your thoughts on OBJ potentially to Green Bay? And as some people are listening to this later in the day, maybe this has already been decided, and maybe Odell Beckham's already a Packer, and maybe Allen Lazard's already given him number 13. Who the heck knows as you're listening to this what has happened? But as we are recording this, Odell Beckham is not a Packer, nor with any other team. So where are you at with this, Rachel?
Did I turn my Twitter notifications on?
Just in case. I got him at all times.
I think off the bat, this already stinks like the Stephon Gilmore situation, whereas the Packers were not taking that price tag unless they were going to pay vets minimum. That's just, I don't think OBJ wants to seep that low on his paycheck just to make it here. I could be wrong. But again, right now, the price tag isn't going to work for the Packers off the bat, exactly why they weren't actually in the Stephon Gilmore race. Second of all, it just blows my mind. This wide receiver room is already so deep. I'm not saying that their injuries don't happen, all these things, but this room is already so deep. And I don't know if you're really going to tell Devontae to sit down for Odell Beckham Jr.'s ego. Or is he says him and Devontae are friends. Obviously, they go way back. Is he really okay being number 2 to Devontae? Does Randall Cobb want an even more isolated role when he came back to at least get some? You know, you've got guys growing and developing, and the Packers game plan already shifts so much week to week based on their opponents and their receivers' strengths. I do not see that much value adding Odell to this locker room at this point in the season. Maybe if MVS was more hurt, maybe if there were deeper issues going on. But to me, this just seems so far-fetched without that much reward. I'm not saying no reward, but it just seems like there's a little more risk.
I agree. And I tend to be on the same page. So first of all, I've been on the bandwagon of, I think Odell Beckham has been one of the most overrated receivers literally ever. And certainly as of recently, I just don't see the added value that he has brought to teams. I've seen times where there's a game in Green Bay where Odell Beckham and Eli Manning and the Giants came to Green Bay against Ladarius Gunter and, Quentin Rollins and Damaris Randall, and Beckham couldn't do anything. And they just, it always seems like there's something. It always seems like the offense isn't quite clicking when Beckham is in Cleveland. Last year, all of a sudden the Browns offense came to life when Beckham went out. This year, Beckham is now gone from the team, and Baker and that Cleveland offense has the best week of their season so far. And Baker is flinging the ball all over the field, and Donovan Peoples-Jones is getting deep. It just seems that when Beckham isn't around the team, and obviously I can't make the argument that the Giants have gotten better since Beckham has left. That certainly has not been the case. But I just don't see the offensive productivity and efficiency. It's almost like a volume scorer in basketball who needs to take 30 shots a game to get 30 points. And it's not apples to apples, but I think you have this volume player who wants the ball a ton, but the efficiency just hasn't been there and the victories haven't been there. And I know as much as wins aren't a QB stat, they're certainly not a wide receiver stat either. All of that being said, and I am not team necessarily sign Odell Beckham. Doesn't this season just seem to fit signing Odell Beckham for Green Bay? It just seems like the next logical step in this crazy, absurd season. I do think there is some reward with very little risk. Now, this is all with the caveat that Odell Beckham wants to, like, as reports have stated, that he wants to be a Green Bay Packer, which means he signs for at or near the vet minimum for the remainder of the season on a one-year deal. That he is willing to take a lesser role to play with Green Bay because he wants an opportunity to play for a championship. If all of that comes together and it's an Antonio Brown situation for the Bucs where Brown recognized that he needed to remake his image and go play with the team, even though they had Mike Evans, even though they had Chris Godwin, he was going to take a lesser role and play that to the best of his ability because he needed to remake his image. If Beckham's in that same frame of mind and saying, you know what, I know you've got Adams, I know you got Aaron Jones, I know you got Dylan, I'm just here, put me out there when you need me, and I'm willing to do that. If he's in that headspace and they can talk to him ahead of time, then I can potentially understand there being some reward without the incredible risk. And like I said, it just seems like if in 99 out of other 100 Packer seasons, I would tell you there's no chance of this happening. And this one, I'm just like, everyone else has as much idea as I do. Anything is possible in this season. Nothing would shock me.
Again, if all those dominoes fell the right way, I think I agree with you. Based on what we've seen over the past 2 weeks, I just don't know. Even if he signs and says that, I don't know if that's really what's in his heart.
I agree.
And I think this locker room has dealt with enough ego over the past year, for better or for worse. How are you going to leave an OBJ and Baker locker room to go to an Aaron, Devontae, lots of guys who think highly of themselves, and add another guy in like that? I just don't know. Poor Goody adding another personality like that. That is a lot to take on.
It's a lot of mouths to feed too, right? Like I was just talking to Aaron Nagler about this on Tuesday, where I already feel like at running back, where it almost feels like Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, neither of them can get in a rhythm because both of them exist, right? Both of them very good running backs, and both of them, like they're getting carries and they're both being effective. But it almost feels like if one of them was the the breadwinner on any given game, like the one that was getting the majority of the touches, that they would be better, whether that's Jones or Dillon. And like I'd almost rather it be a Jones game or a Dillon game and the other one be the complement than trying to get both of them involved. And now all of a sudden you already are a volume receiver in Devontae Adams, who, with Rodgers at quarterback is going to get, 15 looks a game on that side of the field. You still have players like MVS and Randall Cobb and Alan Lazard that you need to get some touches to here and there. Like there's already I feel like a little bit more of a disjointed offense this year than maybe there was a season ago. And I think adding in an Odell Beckham, while there can be some very big potential benefits, including potentially teams not being able to hone in quite as much on Devontae Adams if Beckham's on the other side, and certainly there could be some benefits there. It's just a lot of mouths to feed, and if you're not careful with that, by trying to make another person happy, you might make everyone upset. And I just think there could be some fragileness there, fragility.
Fragility.
Fragility. Thank you.
But I really fully agree with you. At the end of the day, I am so pro players having fresh starts, renewed play ability with other teams, new schemes. But here, there's already not enough snaps to go around. They're already struggling to get guys in their groove at certain points of the game. I just can't see how this logically works. You could really topple what is successful right now into complete disarray. But, offense aside, Joe Barry returned, and it seemed like, man, did he absolutely kill it coming back from COVID and just putting on a defensive show at Arrowhead. Chris Barnes lights out. That goal line block really had me. I kept watching that replay. I was freaked. I was a little shook by that.
Yeah, no, that was tremendous by Chris Barnes. And, it takes players sometimes a while to find their exact right body that they need to play at, especially at a position like linebacker where you put on 5 pounds and maybe you're a bit more physical, but you lose that speed maybe to get sideline to sideline. You take off that weight and maybe you can get sideline to sideline, but you can't hold up at the point of attack when a 320-pound guard's coming to block you on the second level. It really takes some time to maybe potentially figure that out. All the talk all offseason was Barnes dropping weight and playing quicker, which sounds great. But again, you're not sure if they're going to be able to hold up physically at a lower weight. Well, guess what? He can hang physically, because if you had any doubts about that, just look at the tape from last week where he laid a number of hits. But going back to Joe Barry for a second, I could not be more impressed with what he has done with this defense. And so many times when you have a defense that's taking a step, it's because your stars are stepping up, right? And in this case, Zadarius Smith and Jair Alexander, not only, not stepping, they can't step up, right? Because they're not in the game. They have been out injured. You've had to fight through a variety of different injuries. Kenny Clark this past game, you've had, Kevin King be out, Stokes be out this past week. Like, there's just been a multitude of things that they've had to overcome. Preston Smith missed the game uncharacteristically, yet it hasn't seemed to matter, especially as of late. And I think the thing that I'm so impressed by is it's how this team is playing. There is a tangible and real feel that you get from this defense, that they understand what their responsibilities are. They are communicating better. They are on the same page, and they are flying to the football, rallying to the football, and really playing as a team. And there's a huge difference in 11 players playing defense and playing actual team defense. And you can feel the difference when it starts being a team defense. And in my opinion, as I watch this closely, these last few weeks, we have started legitimately seeing this team play as a team defense. And even when you're playing as a team, when you're playing as 11 people moving all in the same area, like, there have been multiple plays over the last few weeks where there's 8 guys coming in and surrounding the player at the same time, which gets me so geeked up because we didn't always see that in Green Bay. And yes, it is nice to have players like Jair Alexander and Zadarius Smith. And that's why I'm so hopeful when those players come back that this even takes it up a next step if and when that happens. But when you have people that are on the same page, playing with intensity, playing fast, reading their keys, and playing as 11 guys collectively, it changes everything. And we've, in my opinion, really started to see that these last few weeks.
I completely agree. I literally wrote down seamless team defense.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it looks like, moving as a unit. They held the Chiefs to under 240 yards of total offense, 5 of 14 on third downs. It's just that communication and a physical connectiveness really seems to be jiving right now with these guys. And it's awesome to see, not only for Joe Barry, for so many guys in this system who are either added in or have grown in the Packers system. It's just awesome to see this unit actually put out onto the field, onto the tape, what they talked about all summer.
And what for this defense has changed, right? So obviously Devondre Campbell, major addition for the middle of this defense. And that is a major, major change. No questions about it. But Adrian Amos, Darnell Savage, same safeties. At corner, you haven't had Jair. So no matter what else, yes, Russell Douglas has been good. Eric Stokes has been nice as a rookie. But no matter what, you're not going to be as good as corner when Jair Alexander's been out the majority of the year. Chris Barnes, still the number 2 linebacker. Yes, Campbell's been an upgrade over Kamal Martin as well as Christian Kirksey. But Kenny Clark, same. The rest of the defensive line, basically the same. You've been missing Zadarius Smith. Yes, Preston Smith's playing a little bit better. But overall, this is the same group of players, if not worse, because you're missing some of those guys due to injury. It's the same coaching staff that Mike Pettin had a season ago. The major difference is Devondre Campbell and Joe Barry. And to me, one of the key reasons that Devondre Campbell is playing the best season of his career is because of some of the positions that Joe Barry has been able to put him in this defense. So we have a lot of season left. And certainly if you are a fan of the Packers for any period of time, you know not to trust the Packers defense for too long, and they will burn you eventually at some point, it seems like. But you take what we've seen so far and praise it, because it's been really impressive. And I'm really excited where this defense is headed.
Absolutely. And if it's not proof enough that they're doing so well, you have the failed Jalen Smith experiment to put everything back into place and remind you how good these guys really are playing together.
And it takes sometimes trying different things and figuring out what players fit together on the field at the same time, and how those players work off of each other, and taking a low risk potential reward flyer on a Jalen Smith. No harm, no foul. You play him for 20 snaps. You realize he's not the same player he once was. You move in a different direction. I like the idea that they still brought that player in. See if he had anything to offer. He didn't, and you move on. No big deal. They did the same thing with Rasul Douglas, and guess what? It did work out. In a way, they did the same thing with Devondre Campbell. It wasn't as low price of a flyer. It was still a $2 million deal, but they try him out as kind of that next guy up at inside linebacker. He works out. Some of those you're going to hit on, some you're not. And I think it takes, sometimes 8, 10, 12 weeks to try those different pieces together. And I still think on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's along the offensive line, whether it's at wide receiver, whether it's at running back, they're still trying to figure out those rotations and what works best together. And I don't think, like last year, I thought Matt LaFleur did that masterfully. This year, I think they're still trying to feel some things out, and players have been in and out of the lineup, and now Rodgers is missed and so on and so forth. I think they're still trying to figure that out. I think the defense is actually much closer to figuring out what guys need to be in at the right times. And I think they're, like I said, really trending in the right direction.
I completely agree. And, we'll have offensive line changes probably coming up with Bakhtiari expected to be activated off PUP. I know you had some pretty low grades for Royce Newman. Let's break that down.
Yeah. So as I mentioned yesterday, my third lowest grade over the last 4 years, as I've been using the same system over the last 4 years. Only Alex Light and Byron Bell had lower rated grades over that time period. And I think that the disappointing, so I've been pretty high on Royce Newman is probably the wrong word, but I've tried to kind of calm some of the fears up until this point and saying, hey, it's not as bad as it may have looked at times. There's a couple issues here and there, but there's some really good stuff he's putting on tape. This was not that. This was a complete beatdown, mostly by Chris Jones, which he will do to a variety of different players, whether you're a rookie or not. But just some of the mental processing, some of the things that he needed to do to kind of pick up his assignments, and then just the pure physicality of run blocking, pass protecting. You just didn't have it this game. And sometimes, especially as you're a rookie in this league, that happens. I'm not burying Royce Newman and saying that he doesn't have it, but this was a really poor game, and one of the performances that really made things that much more difficult on Jordan Love in this game. And I do think Green Bay, when David Bakhtiari comes back, is going to have to seriously look at how they want to configure this offensive line. I think it gets relatively easy if all 5 players are healthy. To me, Josh Myers is still your center. I think you've got Elton Jenkins and John Runyon Jr. as your 2 guards. Those to me have been certainly John Runyon has been well ahead of both Royce Newman and Lucas Patrick at this point. And then of course you've got Bakhtiari and Billy Turner at tackle. With Myers out, though, you have some decisions to make. Do you want to keep Lucas Patrick at center, maybe put John Runyon to right guard, Elton Jenkins at left guard? Do you want to keep Runyon at left guard, put Jenkins at right guard, put Jenkins at center? Do you want, there's so many different options that they could go. But the way that really Royce and Lucas Patrick have played, especially these past few weeks, I think they're going to have to look at ways that they can maybe minimize some of that. And if at least you don't have both of those guys on the field at the same time, I think right now that's going to be an upgrade for Green Bay.
Absolutely. When you look at the tape of last week, Love barely had a clean pocket, but a lot of those issues did run right through Newman, unfortunately. But when you look at all those options moving around, Runyon has put out way better tape so far this season, even than he did at training camp. It was a much closer battle for the 3 of those. He's grown a lot, but yeah, this is just at every corner of this season, Green Bay is squeezed at some point, and next up is going to be offensive line decisions. Again, we're just talking about the big guys today. Kenny Clark stepped out. He's not expected to be out the long-term injury, but we got to see another rookie play, TJ Slayton. What did you think of his performance?
Yeah, I was really excited. And, certainly was not a perfect game by TJ in any stretch of the imagination, but when Kenny Clark goes down, there's just no replacing that type of player. And Slayton's the closest thing as to having the pure raw physical tools to have some of that. Now his pad level needs improving. It just you're not expecting him to come in and be anything close to Kenny Clark, but his raw talent that he shows and the ability to hold up at the point of attack, throw some players off at, from time to time. And there's rare players who can actually reset the line of scrimmage. It's one thing to hold up at the point of attack, and it's what makes Kenny Clark so special. It's another to be able to take offensive linemen and to push them into the backfield. And as Slayton improves his technique, and that's the hope, is that at some point that technique becomes much better over time. If it gets to that point, look the heck out, because he's competing right now just on pure raw physical ability and strength and size. I mean, Rachel, you've seen him in person. Obviously, he is a mammoth man, and not somebody that you would want to see, as an enemy in any way, shape, or form. I certainly would not want to be lined up across him on a football field. But I thought he came in and stepped up and played pretty darn well given the situation. And we know that, Kingsley Keke wasn't playing. Dean Lowry was on a snap count. Kenny Clark goes out. You're going to need guys like Jack Heflin and TJ Slayton in that game to come in and step up. And I thought Slayton did that really to the best of his ability for a rookie player who's still really learning the nuances of the game.
Yeah, I think he's just got so many great examples in front of him to look to at practice. Clark, Keke, Lowry, wherever they want to play him, he's got great examples to learn from that are explosive off the line this year. Again, yeah, he's a huge, scary dude. I remember specifically Jerry Montgomery at various points this season from training camp on, really having to work with him to finesse that pad level, his points of attack. But again, he does know how to use his size. It's just aiming that power correctly. I'm looking forward to him even further improvement, but it was exciting to see him play. 3 solo tackles. I think he is something he should be proud of.
No, for sure. And you just don't know how those situations are going to go, right? Whether it's a quarterback making his first start, whether it's a rookie right guard in Royce Newman, young players are going to make mistakes, and you're just not sure how mentally prepared and how mentally tough. And especially when you get thrown into a situation like that mid-game. I promise you, TJ Slayton and the coaches were not expecting that Slayton was going to play as many snaps as he did. So to come in and play as well as he did, again, no perfect game by any stretch of the imagination, but to play the way he did, I thought was impressive. And when you see rookies step up and make plays like that, I think it's worth shouting out. And I thought he did a good job coming into a game kind of cold and making an impact.
Absolutely. And there's always someone I like to talk to, even though it seems really hard for fans to support him. But Kevin King played well. I will say it. I'll say it again. Kevin King played well.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, right? If we're going to call out players when they do not play well, then we need to call out players when they do play well. And hopefully, you can kind of put aside, past experiences and things like that, because Kevin King played really freaking well in this game, and he deserves a ton of credit for that. Yes, he could have potentially had an interception before halftime, but still made a fantastic play on that football. He tackled well. He tackled aggressively. He was one of those players that was flying around and going to the football, which has not been the MO for him over the course of his career. And he covered well throughout the course of the game. And when he did give up completions, guess what? He was right there to make the tackle. And, again, has Kevin King been, a 1A corner in this league? No, but he still has talent. He can still help your team. And I think always the issue in question with Kevin is inconsistency. And you'd like to see that repeated week after week. When Kevin King has good games, they are really, really good games, which is why teams like Green Bay don't want to give up on that type of player, because they see this talented individual who's got great size, good athleticism, maybe not quite the athleticism he came out with in college, but still has it, is understanding the game. And if he can just hone that in, you can see what type of game he can have. He had one of those games against Kansas City. It's unfortunate that it didn't, pay off in a win, as this defense all played great, but Kevin King very much deserving of praise for his efforts this past game.
Absolutely. And to me, against the Chiefs, I think we saw a little bit of a dynamic shift in his type of game. Like you said, the physicality. I'm not saying he has the body type to be a sort of hybrid, like we've seen maybe Lazard become a wide receiver tight end hybrid. But at the end of the day, he tied Devondre Campbell with 7 total 4 solo tackles. He was getting really physical. I asked him about that pass deflected in post game, and he said, you know what? I know I can catch. I didn't catch it that time. It hits you right in the chest. At the end of the day, he visualizes himself making the play correctly. and then you have to move on to the next snap. And I think at the end of the day, if he can keep that mental wellness, that's all you should want of your players to do in order to be able to make the plays at the right time. A pass deflected is still a pass deflected. That was key. It's a down is a down. But at the end of the day, I just think it's an awesome moment in his development, in his standing with the team, to see that type of more physical game show up. It's, again, that seamless sort of combination between physical blocking and skilled defense that I think is something that Green Bay is quietly really pushing on these guys.
And you're seeing, and this is just another example of a player that played with confidence, right? And I think that just goes to show of where this defense as a whole is at and where the coaches have been able to get them. I think he was another player that played with confidence. And listen, the start of the season, the question was very, very legitimate. It looked at for a moment like they had Jair Alexander at cornerback and nobody else. Like it legitimately looked like, Kevin King was going to be maybe same inconsistent Kevin King. Chandon Sullivan wasn't going to be able to hang in the slot. Rasul Douglas wasn't even on the team. You had no idea what you had in Eric Stokes. Josh Jackson looked bad, which is why they trade him. They get Isaac Yiadom. Isaac Yiadom hasn't obviously, played. I mean, he's not meant to be a top corner, right? He's meant to be a special teams guy. But Shamar Jean-Charles not ready to play at this point. There was legitimate questions as to do they have anyone who can cover besides Jair Alexander? And now the way that these corners are playing right now, it legitimately looks like you have a real question mark as to how you align these corners, because you almost have too many corners to get on the field at once, because Eric Stokes, obviously Jair Alexander, Chandon Sullivan, Kevin King, Rasul Douglas, all five of those guys look like starters right now, which is a great problem to have. And I'm going to be very, very intrigued to see how they utilize those five if and when, hopefully sooner rather than later, everyone's healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Because you don't want that talent to be wasted. Depth is great when you need it until there's too much. You never want to put the team in the situation for coaches or fans questioning, well, could this play have been different if we had someone else in at the position, at the slot, at whatever, even though that's all we do and that's what we get paid to do with our time. But at the end of the day, it is awesome to see the talent has really risen to the occasion. And I think we can say Kevin King is back.
Yeah, no, I think that was a really nice performance. Again, the big thing for Kevin is to quote Mike McCarthy, to stack success, do it week after week and show that consistency. And to Kevin's defense, and actually maybe the crazy thing, he may have been asked to be the slot guy going into that game. We don't know, right? It easily could have been Rasul and Stokes on the outside with King in the slot, and maybe they, sub King and Chandon. We don't know what the expectation was, into that game. Stokes suffers the pregame injury and King plays the entirety of the game on the outside along with Douglas, and nobody missed a beat, right? King, Douglas, Sullivan, I thought all three of them had really nice games. And again, it just goes to the coaching and where this team's confidence is at right now. And the depth.
Yeah. Yep. And it's, next up we have former Badger Russell Wilson marching down to Lambeau. I think this matchup is very different when you have Russell at the helm than Geno Smith.
Yeah. And Aaron Rodgers and not Jordan Love, at least probably at this point. So, going in, a few days ago, you didn't know if it was going to be Geno Smith versus Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers versus Russell Wilson, or anything in between. But this should be, phenomenal football game. Obviously, Russell making his way back from injury and missing some time. Aaron potentially making his way back after being out with COVID. And then you have two teams that obviously very much want to win this game. This is a very big game for Seattle after they drop some games with Geno Smith. If they want to get back in the playoff picture, I don't think they're going to be able to get back on top of the NFC West, but they should be able to get back in the wild card conversation. They need to start winning games exactly like this. And for Green Bay, if you want to keep chances alive at a number 1 seed, or at least not fall down to that number 3, number 4 line and have to face probably the loser between the Rams and the Cardinals as the number 5 seed. If you're the 4, you're going to face the whoever finishes second in that division as the number 5 seed in the first round. That's the one thing you very much want to avoid, is that number 4 seed. And thankfully last week, Dallas dropped a game, which certainly helps with that. But they're going to be competing with Tampa and Dallas at the, for those probably number 2, 3, 4 spots. And, oh, by the way, the NFC West, because there is an Arizona and there is an LA and there is a Seattle that's trying to fight and claw back, that division could tear each other apart as well. So whoever wins the division, that seeding 1, 2, 3, 4 is going to be very important and very intriguing to see how that works out the remainder of the season.
Exactly. And we've seen this team be so momentum based, stacking these wins is so important. You've got Seahawks, Vikings, Rams, just in the short-sighted future. At the end of the day, you can't afford any more losses if you really want to keep stiff arming the rest of the NFC at this rate.
No, and I think it's a good thing to have, right? I think you want to continue to play, because they're not, in all likelihood, knock on wood, they're not going to get challenged from the division, right? Like, I think legitimately 2 more wins could potentially put this division away, especially if those wins are against Chicago and Minnesota. Like, I don't see Chicago or Minnesota challenging in the division. Obviously, Detroit's not going to. So, you're not going to get pushed from the teams in all likelihood within your division. So, you want to be able to continue to be pushed throughout the season and playing your best football as postseason comes along. And sometimes if you just got everything wrapped up, you kind of can let your foot off the gas a little bit. So I think that challenge and trying to get up to that number 1 seed, or at least try to stay at number 2, I think, it has a lot of value. And I think that's going to serve Green Bay very well.
Yeah, I agree. Well, the countdown is on for Russell Wilson's arrival.
Cannot wait. Rachel, any final thoughts before we head out of here?
No, I can't believe we're about to be 10 weeks into this whole thing.
It does seem crazy. It goes so fast every single year. It absolutely blows my mind. Even in a 17-game season, it blows my mind that we're already this far into it. But enjoying it. We've had quite the roller coaster of a season already, which certainly seems to continue. Maybe, Odell Beckham throws himself on that roller coaster as people are listening to this. That will remain to be seen. Although certainly I should have a very fun podcast tomorrow, if that is the case, to break down. But awesome as always. The Packers, only good things should happen since we were able to get together and do this today. So now that we're back on track, the Packers should be back on track. And Rachel, I will talk to you in a week.
I hope so. Should we do the chip challenge if OBJ comes to Green Bay?
We'll let you do that one because
just me. Oh, okay.
Just you. I have a little bit more faith that this could potentially happen. I'm not really ready to risk the chip quite yet.
I'll risk the chip.
You risk it. Okay. All right. I'm not going to let you do it on your own. So I'll do it as well. If Odell Beckham signs with the Packers, maybe we can split a chip or something, because I don't know that. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I don't know how to acquire said chips.
You just go to Amazon. It's like $20 for a chip.
Jeff Bezos has everything these days.
Yeah, he really, really does, including very insanely spicy.
$20 for one chip? Not even a bag of chips?
Now we're looking this up live here, not, because now
$20 a chip? That's a ripoff.
Well, you can't just get these peppers anywhere, Rachel.
Right, but the likelihood of me finishing a whole chip is slim to none. The fact that
you just got to eat all of it. So it is $36 for 2 chips.
2 chips.
2 chips, $36.
How big is the chip?
Just a normal tortilla chip.
That tortilla chips vary in size, my friend.
I don't know. It's a very normal size tortilla chip.
Not a potato chip.
Yeah, it's like I don't know, like this big. I don't know.
A tortilla chip is not round; it's triangular.
It is a triangle chip. Sorry, it's like this. It's like a Dorito.
Okay.
Like a singular Dorito.
$36 for 2 chips.
Only 25 calories. Only 1 gram of fat per chip. And yeah, only 2 left in stock. So we're gonna have to order quickly if Odell Beckham decides to sign. It's the Pocky PAQUI 1 chip challenge. Go online and watch the people do it, and it looks insanely painful. So I'm officially cheering for Odell Beckham to not be a Green Bay Packer.
Exactly. All right. Glad I got you on the same team.
There you go. Rachel, amazing stuff as always. We will be right back here next week. Everyone enjoy Packers Seahawks. I'll be right back here tomorrow. So make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure to follow Rachel on Twitter at Rachel Hopmayer. You can follow me at Andy Herman NFL. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Until next time. And as always, go Pack Go.